So in this translation, and the purport prophet is making the distinction between what we experience in the material world and what one experiences in the spiritual world. He's saying that the material world is kind of like a dream. It's not reality, even though it's sometimes referred to as the, quote, real, end quote, world. When we're dreaming, sometimes it seems that, it very often seems that this is reality. Then when we wake up, we realize that it's not reality. So dreaming is a non-real state. And similarly, someone once asked Prabhupada, what if I take intoxicants? And I think that the intoxicant was LSD. And Prabhupada's response was, you don't need this. So it's kind of like putting a dream on top of a dream, trying to escape from a so-called reality, which is not a reality. The idea being that the real world is the spiritual world, and that the dream world, the so-called real world, is really the dream world. So that everything we're living is kind of like a dream. It's very difficult to approach people because they think that we live in an ethereal or unreal world, the world of spiritual world, of Krishna consciousness, and that the so-called real world is the real world, whereas it is only a dream. But it's very difficult to escape from this dream because, for example, it's very painful sometimes. We feel great pain in the body. One example that I heard once was that someone asked, when is it possible to take sannyas? And the answer was that if certain parts of the body are unconscious, like the hairs and the nails of the fingers, and if you cut them, you don't feel anything. But if you cut the fingernail improperly and you go down too far, too deep, cut the skin, it's very painful. And so that is that was the answer, that sannyas can be taken only when one is ready, and if one tries to take it prematurely, it's a very painful experience. It's like cutting into the skin instead of the fingernail, and it becomes a very painful thing. So the answer was that it has to be taken at the right time. It's very difficult to approach people in the so-called real world because they think it is the real world, and it's actually a dream world. When Prabhupada was preaching in the Bowery, in New York, he used to call the devotees Mr. or Mrs. And it made everyone feel very important because there's Mr. John, Mr. Joseph, Mr. Michael, and Mrs. Judy and Mrs. somebody or other, Mrs. Lily, and so on. And so everyone felt very important. And this is a way that Prabhupada was expressing his humility, even though he was much older than almost everybody there. Still, he was addressing people as Mr. and Mrs. by their first names sometimes. And everyone felt very important and felt superior to Srila Prabhupada, even though he was much older and more superior in almost every way, being a highly advanced spiritual person, spiritually advanced person, you might say. So humility is very important, and this is one of the secrets of preaching. Well, I interviewed once this Mr. O.B.L. Kapoor. I don't think he's living anymore. He wrote an article in Back to Godhead. He was a justice or a judge at one time in India. And he saw Prabhupada just before Prabhupada left for the West, and he asked him, what will you do if you're going to go so far away? And Prabhupada says, well, I have a secret formula. And he asked him, O.B.L. Kapoor asked Prabhupada, what is that secret formula? And Prabhupada said, I'll tell you later on, but he wouldn't tell him then. So later on he came back from the West and saw this man. And this man didn't recognize him at first. Of course, he was getting on in years, and there tends to be a certain lack of recognition or remembrance in old age. Finally, he regularly said, "Oh, bye." I said, "Yes." He said, "You're back from the West. I hear you've been very successful." And Prabhupada said, "Well, I've had some modicum of success." And he said, "So now you can tell me what was your secret formula." And he told him that the secret formula was Trinada Pisunichina. That was the famous third verse in the Shikshastakam. Trinada Pisunichina Tarori Vasvishnu Namanadina Kirtani Exodakari. We should offer all respect to others. That was what Prabhupada said was his secret formula of being able to preach Krishna consciousness. So it's very difficult sometimes to approach the conditioned souls because they're very ensconced in what they consider to be reality, and they think that devotees are living in a kind of ethereal, non-real, imaginary world, the spiritual world. So it is very difficult sometimes. But the secret formula is to offer respect to everyone. And in this way, sometimes people they'll be softened a little bit and they'll make donations, as Rupa Raghunath has realized. Sometimes people will take books, even though they don't like these books. And one of the great things that happened with these books, they're books that sort of say that one of the messages in books like this is that the world that we live in is not the real world. It's kind of a dream world. There's not such a market for this kind of literature in the world. In marketing, people try to find out what people like or what they adhere to, what their particular aspirations are, what things they like better than other things, what interests them, what are their concerns and their needs, their interests. So books like this are very different because they're saying that these aren't the real things that one should be interested in. They're saying that we shouldn't take intoxication, we shouldn't have illicit sex, we shouldn't indulge in intoxication, we shouldn't eat meat, we shouldn't gamble. Well, this is very much just the opposite of what people think is enjoyment. People walk down the main streets and they hear music playing and they think, "Oh, this is very beautiful," and they see people eating kangaroos and emus and various other abominable things. And they think, "Oh, this is very good," and so they'll go into a restaurant and spend some money to get something like that to eat. So this is a very unreal and difficult world that we live in. It's a godless world. And therefore, people, they often think that we're living in a dream world, that devotees are living in a dream world. So it's very difficult to approach them. But by using this formula of Trinada Pisunichina, of offering all respect to others and not wanting any respect from them, sometimes they will be very happy to take such books, even though these books are very much against the grain of what they think is important. And that's one of the great things about Krishna consciousness, is that books like this, that are very much opposed to the way people think, have become very popular. And many millions have been sold, given out, distributed, even though they're very much opposed to the way people think, what their needs and their interests and their concerns are. They're very opposed to this, and yet somehow or other, violating all the principles of modern day marketing, books like this have become very popular. They've become very good sellers, and Prabhupada has always emphasized how important it is to distribute these books and to get people to buy into a philosophy that's very different from what they believe. There's a world, it's a spiritual world, but there's another existence that's higher than the existence that they live. It's more important, it's more real. This is one of the great things about Krishna consciousness philosophy. It's said in the Chaitanya Chaitamrita that Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhya Kabunai Shalani Shri Chitte Kari Budai, that Krishna consciousness is within everyone. It's not something that's gained from some external force. It's actually there within the heart of everyone. So Lord Chaitanya has taught, one of the things Lord Chaitanya has taught is that Krishna consciousness is not external. He's taught that it is actually residing in the hearts of every living entity, not just human beings, but also in animals and insects and aquatics and other living beings. There's Krishna consciousness. So if an animal hears the word Krishna or Hare Krishna, that animal is benefited. It seems kind of magical that a creature who has an intelligence that's far less than a human being can be benefited. Nevertheless, benefit is there. Krishna consciousness is very powerful. one can hear the Hare Krishna mantra in not knowing what it is and be benefited by it. This is one of the benefits of chanting, and of course it's one of the ways that people absorb Krishna consciousness. Sometimes they eat Krishna prasadam, sometimes they encounter a devotee somehow, or they'll touch a book or read a book, or just hear about Krishna consciousness and they'll be benefited. There was a time once, I think it was in England, it was in Prabhupada's room, and he was saying that he was speaking. His speech was being recorded at that time on a tape recorder. The tape recorder was made by a company called Lafayette. And he said that the person who was the head of the Lafayette company was getting benefit, even because some Krishna conscious speech was being recorded on one of the tape recorders made by that company. He said that the owner, or the chief executive officer of that company, was getting benefited by it. Sometimes we have to, I was saying to Vladimir the other day, sometimes we have to purchase milk from shops instead of getting milk from the cows that live here. In a way, that's very bad. In another way, it's good because it's benefiting even the cows who are going to be, I don't know if they have to be, but they're going to be killed, they're going to be slaughtered. People are going to eat their meat. But if we buy their milk and drink it, they get some benefit because their milk is being taken by a devotee, even though it may be a very bad thing.